I remember that sinking feeling in my heart when I received my report card during grade 8, and let me tell you, my grades were so bad. I've always been a student who was able to get by without studying, and that was the first time I've ever received a really bad grade. Like at that point, I felt like a total piece of shit. I felt so bad that I literally told myself, I'm going to make the biggest academic comeback of my life. And fast forward to senior high school, I sure did. From almost failing a subject in grade 8 to literally getting a 98% average for my entire senior high school. Yes, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not here to shit on everyone else's grade, but this is literally my report card to prove it. And somehow, I hit it. I somehow cracked the code to getting an academic comeback. And it's not about becoming smarter or not really about, working harder, but it's about having the right study system and habits. And I noticed that with the top students that I personally know as well, they're not necessarily smarter than others, but they just apply better and they just have a better study system. So I'm not gonna waste any more time. Here is my 4-point checklist that you guys can follow. If you have all 4, I can guarantee you're gonna have the best academic comeback of your life. So let's not waste any more time. Let's just get straight into the checklist. Alright, so when it comes to your academics can be divided into 4 pillars. Your study consistency, your study efficiency, your study adaptability, and your study system. And in this video, I want to share with you guys, or I want you to identify where you're lacking among those 4 pillars, and I want you to fix that problem. I'm not saying you're a problem. You're doing great, okay? The fact that you're watching this video, good job. Because if you want to have an academic comeback, it's not about studying harder or just doing more. It's not necessarily about, doing the better study method, although it kind of is, but not really. It's really mainly fixing what's wrong with you. Again, nothing wrong with you. You're perfect. I love you. So I recommend grabbing a journal or at least a notebook or paper, and I want you to list the things that I'll be talking about in this video because I also want you to reflect on what's holding you back. So welcome to step number 1, which is our evaluation step. Again, like I mentioned, I want you to grab a pen and paper. I don't know, write anything down, write it on your phone or whatever, because we are going deep on this one. Starting with the first study pillar, which is study consistency. I always present this first, and this is probably the first question that I ask a lot of students who ask me how to get an academic comeback. The thing is, how can I tell you to get an academic comeback if you don't study consistently in the first place? Unless you're someone who's diligent with your studies, you have no right to fix the other pillars or even watch the rest of this video. I'm just kidding. Please watch the rest of the video because, it's a lot of helpful information here. But if you don't study consistently for the first, I'm losing my words. I'm telling you, if you simply take the time off to study every day, like just study consistently, you're going to have a much easier time in school. I would argue that this will help you in a long shot. I would argue that this is probably the most important step among the 4 pillars. A study done on the top medical students found that the common practice among them was that they dedicated 4 to 5 hours a day to deep studying. They would literally shut off their phones and any communication with any family members and friends. They would lock their room and, lock in their man cave. I'm just kidding. And they would just focus for a couple hours a day, mainly studying every day. So ask yourself the question and be honest with me. Are you truly consistent with your study habits every day? Do you really take the time in your day to, study? Or do you just lounge around and only study till the end of the semester? I mean, come on, I think everyone was there at that point where you just didn't care about studying until the very last week till your exams. So those lacking this pillar, I would highly recommend building a daily study habit. The first step is to build a daily study habit. Rather than doing a long study session a few times per week, I recommend going slow first, making it easier for you by doing these study sessions consistently. And, you could make it a lot easier by just simply shortening your study period. You don't have to study 3 hours, 4 hours. If you're not someone who studies every day, that could be a little bit too much. You could start small. I recommend scheduling a time as well in your day to set aside for extra studying. Now, I would highly recommend doing it after a non-negotiable in your day. So for example, maybe a dinner or perhaps after waking up. Now, personally for me, I do pretty much my extra studying right after I wake up. I made a video about this already. If you guys haven't watched this already, you can go check it out. It's my dopamine-based morning routine. I don't know why it blew up, but thank you. If you're from this video and you're subscribed to this channel, please stay. I have so much more helpful videos coming. But yeah, as soon as I wake up, I go straight to studying. So that's pretty much my morning routine for that. All right, moving on. Dude, this guy's like taking forever to get to his point. Like, I swear to God, he's gonna stall for a couple of minutes and he's gonna do a freaking ad read. Probably the most difficult thing to tackle because number one. Well, this video is sponsored by Brilliant. Alright, so as you guys know, I've always been busy with dental school, YouTube, working out, so many things going on in my life, but I've always been interested in learning, especially stuff like math and science. I've always been wanting to learn those things, but the thing is, as you guys know, I am very, very lazy. Like, I don't like learning things. Like, just because I have a productivity channel doesn't mean that I like studying content. Which is why this video is sponsored by Brilliant. If you guys don't know, Brilliant is a fun learning platform where you could learn math and science or computer science or whatnot in a very fun learning way. And the way you learn is by actively solving problems, which is something that I always advocate for. They teach in a very visual, engaging way instead of just throwing information at you. So it's literally a very fun way to learn all those things. I'm actually taking a different course right now. So I used to take this course about how AI works, but lately I've been going through their scientific reasoning course because I just wanted to kind of learn how to really think objectively and scientifically. So if you guys want to check out Brilliant for free, then head down to the link in the description and you can get 30 days. 30 days free trial. Again, you can head down to the link in the description below, or you could even scan the QR code on the screen. It's a new year, it's 2026. Why not add some fun learning into the mix? Anyway, again, link is in the description. Back to the video. So that's pretty much my morning routine for that. All right, moving on to the next study pillar we have is what we call the study efficiency pillar. Now, basically, are you using efficient study methods? Now, this is probably the most difficult pillar to tackle because number one, study methods are very, subjective. Not everyone benefits from the same study method. And, while there are evidence-based study techniques that are objective and they are shown to literally improve information retention because some people genuinely learn better with different methods. However, based on actual studies, one factor remains true. The best way to retain information is to just test yourself. Practice retrieving in your head or just practice retrieval in general. In other words, always prioritize active learning study methods. Now, not only are they more efficient, but they're also more effective because active study methods actively engage your brain to retrieve information, causing the information to be retained longer in your head. Whether that be flashcards, practice tests, or even reading, you could retrieve information while reading the passage. And the way you know if a study method is efficient is if it's uncomfortable to do. I know no one wants to hear this, but if you really want to retain information faster and, much more efficiently, you will have to actively use your brain. And it's going to be very uncomfortable. Like, trust me, you're gonna feel like a piece of shit. Just kidding. You're gonna feel like a dumbass. You're gonna feel like you don't know anything at all when really you're just trying to retrieve information. That's all. But the thing is, trust me, that's part of the process. You're supposed to feel uncomfortable when you're trying to actively recall information because you're engaging your brain. It's just like hypertrophy, training for your muscles. You will never grow your muscles unless you push yourself beyond your limit. That's why a lot of weightlifters increase their weights outside their normal range. That is because if you push yourself beyond your limits and, as much as it's uncomfortable and painful, not really painful, but just uncomfortable, you will see a lot of progress. And that goes the same with studying. So whatever study method that you have, I want you to try and incorporate some active studying. So for example, testing yourself, making some tests for yourself, actively retrieving information, asking yourself a bunch of questions, or, making flashcards in your own words, or, just general retrieval practice. There must be some sense of retrieval for your study technique to be efficient and effective. So, reviewing this pillar, at least examine how you study right now and try to at least see if there's any active retrieval, and if there isn't, incorporate active retrieval. It's just that simple. All right, moving on to the third pillar we have, and this is probably the most underrated, if not the most underrated, pillar that no one talks about, and I haven't seen most study tubers talk about this. It is to essentially increase your study adaptability. Now, basically, what is study adaptability. How adaptable are you to your class or to your professor? Because as much as you have the best study methods, the best study habits, if you don't know your class well enough, if you don't know your professor, your teacher, you will not go that far. Especially in college, you will realize that different professors have different ways of quizzing or teaching you. For example, in my last semester, one professor really took every question from the book. Like, you had to read a specific reference to get the questions right. Another professor, she put a mixture of questions coming from her lectures and coming from her literal word of mouth, and you had to write everything down for her quizzes. And if you don't account for the specific style of the teacher who teaches about how they teach or how they structure their exam, you're missing out on a lot of points here. So how can you be better at adapting to your class? Now, there are two ways you can increase your study adaptability. Number one is to research, and number two is basically experience. Prior to taking a specific class or a specific teacher, you can ask your peers or even your seniors how the class goes and pretty much what the teacher generally expects from you. For example, in my medicine class or in my pharmacology subject, my teacher is very, very concept heavy, meaning that I should practically focus more on the conceptual side of the subject rather than just plain memorizing facts. Kind of ironic because it's a pharmacology class, a lot of it is memorization, but I really like my prof. She really focused on the concepts. Now, another professor, on the other hand, focused more on the memorization of the questions. And a lot of the questions she gave on the test were from previous tests. So on the other hand, one professor, I had to literally change my study technique just because I had to account for her questions. And another professor, I had to shift my mindset because, she asks different questions in her tests. Now, on the other hand, by experience, by going through their classes, you'll start to realize that you will see pretty much structure their class and what they expect from you. So therefore, because of that experience, you can pretty much modify how you study and what kind of studying that you will be focusing on. Now, I highly recommend creating a Notion page for your university or anything, to track information about your different subjects so that you can jot down notes or whatever information that your teacher really likes or pretty much how they expect from you. So I have this Notion university page template that I've been using for almost so many years now. I've been always linking it in the description below, so if you want to check them out, then you can check it out in the link in the description. But basically, in each subject page, I always jot down what I expect from the teacher or what the teacher pretty much expects from me and what kind of questions that they always have in the exam so that I can always prepare for that. And finally, the last pillar that you need to check is your study system. Now, what is your study system? What apps are you using to track your studying or your school life? Where do you track your assignments? Where do you track your exams, your quizzes? Where do you track those dates? Where do you put your notes for your subjects? Where can you put the notes on the style of teaching that your teacher does in a specific subject? Your study system is essentially your ecosystem of how you tackle school. And if you're lacking in this pillar, your school will be a lot more disorganized and therefore it will take a lot more effort from you and it will add unnecessary stress, which will affect your studies and other pillars. So at least I highly recommend having a straightforward system for how you pretty much organize and track everything related to your school. Now, personally, I would highly recommend having at least a base app for tracking everything. Personally, for me, again, I have my Notion University template. I pretty much use that page, that single page for my entire university career. So it has pretty much everything I need. So subjects for my notes, assignments, deadlines, exams. It even has a revision tracker. So again, if you guys want the template, you can head down to the link in the description to check it out at KNUT.com. It does have a revision tracker again, which I don't see in any other, Notion templates. But of course, it doesn't have to be Notion. If you're using another app, then by all means, use that. All right, so now that you know the 4 pillars of studying, it's time for you to evaluate what you're weak at and what you need to do to really fix that. And trust me, you're just gonna have to really make sure that these 4 pillars are checked. And if they are, then you're most likely gonna have the best academic comeback in your life. I'm not even kidding. The more I think about studying, it's really multifactorial. Like, you really cannot pinpoint one factor that can cause your academic downfall. There's so many factors to keep in mind. That's why I boiled it down to at least 4 major pillars for you guys to at least take into account and at least for you guys to evaluate what can be improved and what you need to fix. So with that being said, with that paper you are writing, I hope you pretty much evaluated what you need to fix. And from that point on, you can start taking action from this video to fix what you're lacking and have a better year academically. Wishing you a lot of luck. Anyway guys, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. It is a little bit of a longer video because I wanted to go more in depth with this. So hopefully you guys, oh my god, my face is so itchy. I don't know. Can someone in the comments write down how many times I scratched my face? Like, I don't know why my nose and my eyebrows are so itchy. But anyway, it is a new school year, a new school semester. I hope you guys will have a wonderful academic year. Again, I don't want to pressure everyone to get top grades or whatever, because what really matters is your journey and improvement, you know, in your academics. You know, you don't have to pressure yourself into, you know, achieving like 98%, 99% grades, 95%, 90%, 85%. Like, just do better. Like, if you do better, that's already great. And, you know, I'm already proud of you for watching this video. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Good luck for your academic year for 2026. Wishing you the best. Don't forget to drink your water, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!